Hi, and happy Super Bowl Sunday to you. Hope it's a beautiful day wherever you are. It's a lovely day here in Asheville, North Carolina. And I'd like to start off with a song about something super that happened on June 12th, 1970. Pitcher by the name of Doc Ellis pitched a no-hitter. But that's not what made it super. He did this while under the influence of LSD. True story.
It was a lovely summer's morning, an off day in L.A. So thought one Doc Ellis, see what later say. His girlfriend read the paper, she said, "Doc, this can't be right. Says here that you're pitching in San Diego tonight. We got to get you to the airport." So off Doc Ellis flew. His legs were a little bit wobbly and the rest of him was too. Took a taxi to the ballpark an hour before the game. Gave a half-assed explanation, found the locker with his name. The organ in the upper deck played all the schmaltzy hits. You could hear it in the clubhouse while Doc was getting dressed. His sunglasses he reached for from his locker in a case. Doc Ellis put his jersey on and he put them on his face. Time came to go on out there down the corridor. Walls were a little bit wavy and there were ripples in the floor. Went out to the bullpen to do a bunch of stretches, loosen up a little, throw some warm-up pitches. All rose for the national anthem. People took off their hats. Fireworks were exploding and the cokes were already going flat. Doc was back there in the dugout. So many things to watch. Some players spit tobacco juice and others grabbed their crotch. Then the umpire hollered, "Play ball." And so it came to be. Doc's Pirates batted first when they went down 1-2-3. Doc's catcher put his mask on and he handed Doc the ball, and it was 327 feet to the left and right field walls. So Doc's Pirates took the field in. Doc stood on the rubber and he bounced a couple of pitches and he bounced a couple of others. You might say about that day that he looked a little wild. The leadoff batter trembled, nobody knew why. Doc Ellis smiled. When you walk, eat, and hit a guy, things that people shout, especially the manager, but it did not take Doc out. Doc found himself a rhythm and a crazy little spin. Amazing things would happen when Doc Ellis zeroed in. Sometimes he saw the catcher, sometimes he did not. Sometimes he held a beach ball, other times it was a dot. Doc was tossing comets that were leaving trails of glitter. In the seventh inning stretch, he still had his no-hitter. So he turns to Cash, his buddy, says, "I got a no-no going." Speaking unspeakable, and he goes back out there throwing. Bottom of the ninth, and he stood high upon the mound. 3 more outs to go, and he'd have his name in Cooperstown. Well, first up was Canizaro, and he flied out to a loop. Then Kelly grounded out for Dean, and the shortstop yelled, "That's two." Must have been a madhouse, fans upon their feet. Littler ones among them were standing on their seats. Well, that would have brought a purple, but Speezy old pinch hit. And he took a third strike looking, and officially that was it. It was a lovely summer's morning, an off day in L.A. So thought one Doc Ellis, as he would later say.
That's one of my favorite little pictures there. Here's another one that I love. Doc Ellis and curlers. And here's one more. That is an imagined bobblehead of the event, which I love. I'd like to know where you're watching from today. If you wouldn't mind putting that in the comments, I'd appreciate it. Most weeks, I like to cut away to what I call puck view, but I want to do something a little different this week. I'm going to show you what it looks like out my window. It snowed overnight. We got about 4 inches, although you can't really see it on the other mountain across the way. But I thought you might appreciate that. So today's show is a bunch of songs and stories that are about super people, or super things done by super people, or super events. And this is a special story about something that happened at Christmas time some years back. A woman who was living in a holler in Virginia found out about a little girl in her community that really wanted to keep on taking flute lessons. She loved music, but her mom couldn't afford it. She couldn't even afford to rent a flute for her. And this woman that lived in the holler happened to have a flute. She hadn't played it in many years, but once upon a time it meant the world to her. And she realized that she needed to pass this flute along to this young girl named Catherine. So this is called A Toast to the Woman in the Holler.
Catherine's boyfriend played saxophone. Catherine wanted a flute. There was one in the window of the music store that happened to be a real beaut. My mummy couldn't afford it. This much Catherine knew. Still she stood there a few minutes dreaming, knowing that it wouldn't come true. Christmas time was a-comin'. Catherine had the blues. Her mom asked her what she wanted. Catherine didn't tell the truth. She knew it wasn't the money, not even for one to rent. But the only thing that Catherine really wanted was to play an instrument. Catherine cried for a month in her bedroom. She had to quit the school band. Now the woman that lived in the holler, she heard about this secondhand, and the goodness gathered within her, and it fluttered like butterflies. She, in a vision, released them. She watched them take to the skies. Now on a very cold night in December, maybe the coldest night of the year, the woman that lived in the holler, she cried a few secret tears for those last few moments of glory, and the glories that had all been before, in the times it had been there to rescue her. She set her flute down by the door. Now people, they whisper about her. The locals say she's a witch. Well, she'd be the first to come help them if they ended up in a ditch. Those candles she lights from her altar, well, they burn as a gesture of love, the kind they talk about in the churches, yet they know so little of. Now it's one day just after Christmas. Catherine wore her new hat. Her mom brought her out to the holler. The woman was there with her cats. Catherine had no idea. Oh, maybe someday she would. But what she would soon be receiving was being given for a greater good. So here's to the sweet gift of music. Here's to the power of song. Here's a toast to the woman in the holler for passing these things along. Well, the case was covered that this woman had scrawled from the magic places that she had been to, trinkets from her own Mardi Gras. And it all meant nothing to Catherine, 'cause it wasn't her story to tell. Well, she'll have her own words and stickers should she ever fall under the spell. So it's Catherine's turn now to hold her, and here's hoping she'll learn how to play. Maybe she'll drop by the Holler to visit this woman someday. Maybe she'll come with her boyfriend, the one who plays saxophone. Maybe they'll play for the woman a few things they made up on their own. Here's to the sweet gift of music. Here's to the power of song. Here's a toast to the women in the Holler for passing these things along.
So I just want to give a quick shout out to a friend named Jeff Campbell, who runs an organization called Hungry for Music. And Hungry for Music has given away more than 10,000 musical instruments to deserving kids who can't otherwise afford them. That's something that you might want to just look up, Google sometime. Hungry for Music. It's an amazing, amazing program. So I'm going to stick with the theme of music, and I want to show you a picture here. This man's name is Amnon Weinstein, and he lives in Tel Aviv, Israel. And for many years now, he has been repairing and restoring Holocaust violins. That is, violins that used to belong to Holocaust victims, or violins that were found destroyed in attics and cellars and false floors and false walls. He found things like this inside of some of them. Many of them were defaced and defiled. But Amnon has restored well over 100 by now. When 40 had been restored, a concert was held at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, and all 40 of those violins were played, and the music performed at that concert was music written by the composers that had been banned by the Nazis. So it was a triumphant event. And I want to show you something here. I own a Holocaust violin. This was not restored by Amnon, and I don't know who it was restored by, and there's quite a story behind it, but I'm not going to go into it for lack of time today. But I wanted to write a song to honor Amnon, and so this is called Your Violin.
Violin's ready, it's here in the shop. It's got a new bridge and it's got a new top. The neck it was broken and snapped in two, but now it's almost as good as new. I salvaged the splinters the best that I could. Wherever I couldn't, I patched up the wood. Sounds pretty good, it looks okay. It's ready to pick up, it's ready to play. Music was silenced, locked in its case. It had to be hidden and not show its face. The stormtroopers came, they kicked down the door, and I found it after they tore up the floor. But just for amusement, they forced you to play. They stomped it to bits and just left it there. Your violin's ready, I made the repairs. The bones of his body were kept in a sack by the neighbor in case you might ever come back. Up in the attic, musty with mold, discovered after the house was sold. It wasn't much more than a bag of debris the day when it was delivered to me. The name inside, was it yours as well? Your violin has a story to tell. Every so often another appears, like the rest that have found me over the years. Who'd it belong to, and where was I from? Who wore down the back of the neck with their thumb? I take the pieces and I make them whole, healing the body, waking the soul. I cut and I sand, I bend and I glue, in honor of him and remembrance of you. I cut and I sand, I bend and I glue, in honor of him and remembrance of you.
So, Max Patkin was super. He was known as the Clown Prince of baseball. And for 50 years, Max would perform primarily at minor league ballparks all over North America, occasionally in major league parks as well. If you saw the movie Bull Durham, Max played himself in the film, and he was a hell of a dancer. You might remember him dancing with Susan Sarandon in that film. Anyway, Max Patkin did over 5,000 one-night stands, and in his 50-year career, he never failed to show up for a single one of those events. Now, I got to meet Max about a week before he passed away. I had already written this song. The original title was called Going to Heaven, but Max passed away a week after I met him, and I changed the title to Gone to Heaven. Interestingly enough, Max Patkin wanted to manage me. Yes, he did. He wanted to manage me. He wanted to book me, help me get bookings at minor league ballparks in the summertime to sing my baseball songs, and that would have been something, eh, if that had happened. So this is called Gone to Heaven.
His uniform was baggy, and he had gigantic feet. His hat was always cockeyed, and he had but a few teeth. And his schnoz as big as Baltimore, and a heart as big as Devon. Max Patkin made the children laugh, and for that he's gone to heaven. Max Patkin, he was vaudeville, last of the old-time clowns, funniest looking fella that ever went from town to town. Kind of face that he himself said only a mother could love. With his loosey-goosey limbs and his floppy leather glove. Max Patkin worked 3 innings, and they'd let him coach first base, call a meeting with the batter, and then kiss him on the face. Then he'd do his chicken walk, then his geyser bit. He'd take a sip of soda, tilt his head back and spit. Well, Max would leave him howling and be slumped upon a stool with his back against the locker, filling the whirlpool, dirtied up and sweaty, down to his stockinged feet. He'd give the clubhouse boy $5 to scrape the mud off of his cleats. Oh, the clown prince of baseball, he did 5,000 gigs. For 50 years he shared the bill with circus dogs and talking pigs. By the ninth inning, he'd be back at his motel with an early morning wake-up call. The next night he'd be someplace else. Well, the towels in every motel room, they all smell like chlorine. From the rookie leagues to AAA and all points in between. And all those hotshot prospects ever were bigly bound. Well, you saw them on the way up, some on the way back down. And oh, to be a clown these days, you've got to have thick skin, a flask in your back pocket or a bottle of aspirin. The drunk sometimes will get you, or the team that did not win. Well, it's tough to be a clown these days. You got to have thick skin. Max Patkin loved the children, and the children, they loved him. His body would fall apart sometimes, and he'd patch it up for them. And he never, ever, not even one time, sold an autograph. Funny man, Max Patkin. He made people laugh. But the times changed on Max Patkin. Along came rock and roll, and they blare it from the speakers now. If ever there's a lull, some guy in a chicken suit circling the bases with a corporate logo on his back and in one or two other places. So if there's a St. Peter and he's sitting by the gate, he probably saw Max play sometime and wiped clean Max's slate. That corny old routine dated back to 1947. Max Patkin made the children laugh, and for that he's gone to heaven. Max Patkin made the children laugh, and for that he's gone to heaven. Max Patkin made the children laugh, and for that he's gone to heaven. So, now I want to show you a picture of this fella's name is Adolfo Kaminsky. That's his daughter, Sarah Kaminsky. Adolfo passed away last year at the age of 94. When he was a young teenager, he was recruited by the partisans in France because he was working in the garment industry, dyeing clothing. And he had developed a scientific knowledge of inks, dyes, and fabrics, and the partisans realized he would make a perfect candidate to forge documents and passports for them that would enable people to escape the repressive regime, flee the Nazis. And this work was so secretive he was not even able to tell his wife or his daughter. An apartment was rented for him a few blocks from where he lived, and that's where his workspace was. He would go there every night, and he did not sleep. They would give him impossible orders. He would meet with one single handler, and they'd give him impossible orders like they needed 200 passports by the next morning. And Adolfo never failed to deliver, but it meant he didn't get to sleep. And he realized that for every, well, he was able to forge 30 passports in an hour, and so he realized for every hour of sleep that he might steal for himself, it would cost 30 people their lives, and so he didn't sleep. Finally, at the age of 89, Adolfo decided he needed to tell somebody. He didn't want to take this to the grave, so he told Sarah, his daughter. And Sarah wrote a fantastic book called A Forger's Life, which is what inspired this song.
This is called The Forger.
Up on the third floor, I used to rent a room. Got no fresh air. You could get dizzy from the fumes. I'd spend the nights in there. Maybe I'd sleep a few winks. Clear a place somewhere between the papers and the inks. I had a printing press. It was my Tommy gun. And I dreamed I'd ambush them whenever it would run. I couldn't shoot a man. Well, this was what I could do. And with my documents, guards would have waved them through. I didn't know them. I never met them. But how could I turn away and just forget them? Still can picture some of their faces. They were desperate to leave for safer places. I was an artisan, a counterfeiter. I had a steady hand that didn't get the jitters. One day the partisans told me my skills were needed. There was madness on the rise that had to be defeated. I doctored names, altered their ages, put a different place of birth upon the pages. I made them businessmen, I made them teachers, I made them someone else with all the same features. I didn't know them, I never met them. But how could I turn away and just forget them? Still can picture some of their faces. They were desperate to leave for safer places. I'd meet my handler in busy cafes. We would trade envelopes, then go our separate ways. No time for small talk, too many lives at stake. Passports to reproduce, all night I'd be awake. I worked in secrecy, nobody knew of this, not even my daughter or my wife. There was just too much risk. They said I worked too much. I couldn't tell them why. But now I have to tell someone before I die. I didn't know them, I never met them. But how could I turn away and just forget them? Still can picture some of their faces. They were desperate to leave for safer places. I didn't know them, I never met them. But how could I turn away and just forget them? Still can picture some of their faces.
The Forger. If you're interested in picking up any of my recordings, I have 12 can pick up CDs from the chuckbrodsky.com store. If you're interested in digital downloads, you can go to Bandcamp. And my downloads are available for whatever price you might be willing to pay. And if you are currently unemployed because of COVID and times are rough, I still want you to be able to have my music. So just go to Bandcamp and you can enter 0 for the amount being paid, and you can download those albums just as if you were paying for them. And I hope you will. Also, if you're watching on Facebook and you'd like to follow me on Facebook, here's how. You just look for that little bell-shaped icon that red arrow is pointing to. Click on it. You'll get a couple of options on how to follow me. That way, anytime I go live and you happen to be on Facebook, you'll get a quick notification alerting you. I'm keeping with the theme today. This is a song that's been misunderstood, misinterpreted a time or two, but I love the way it ends, and I hope you will too.
Supremacist friends are only doing what God intends, burning crosses, burning mosques, vandalizing synagogues. We're the patriotic sons with our semi-automatic guns, prepping for a civil war to make things like they was before. Me and my supremacist clan, this is how we take our stand underneath a Nazi flag, marching right up the main drag, past the church, past the school, where they teach the golden rule, where the children play outside. When we go by, they run and hide. The secret handshake makes you kin, at the door it gets you in. It's how we tell a friend from foe, it's something only we would know. Stir each other's thirst for blood, getting drunker by the hour, mixing things that all taste sour, till we can't control the rage. Any excuse to open the cage, cannot stay inside the house, the beast is foaming at the mouth. Me and my supremacist dad one time beat a foreigner bad. He was somewhere he shouldn't have been, he shouldn't have been with his color skin. And after Daddy kicked his ass and left him lying in the grass, I got some of my own licks in. He was somewhere he shouldn't have been. Secret handshake makes you kin, at the door it gets you in. It's how we tell a friend from foe, it's something only we would know. Foreigner run, chased him down a dead-end street until the circle was complete. There was nowhere that he could run, but I couldn't do what my daddy done, not in front of my own son. Couldn't do what daddy done. Secret handshake makes you kin, at the door it gets you in. It's how we tell a friend from foe, it's something only we would know. Secret handshake makes you kin, at the door
move on. Actually, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to show you something here. Here's a super story. During World War II, the people of Denmark saved their Jewish population. And that's because somebody in the government who was sympathetic found out about the Nazi plan to send 2 big passenger ships to Copenhagen Harbor and round up all the Jews. And they were going to do this on the eve of the Jewish holidays. But because somebody in the government was sympathetic to the Jews, he leaked this. And without any actual organized plan, the Danish people themselves organized themselves into little work crews to shuttle all of the Jewish people to coastal communities where they hid them until dark, and then they ferried them over to Sweden, 9 or 10 miles across the Øresund Sound. Sweden was willing to take them in, and they did this under cover of darkness, and they managed to evacuate 7,000 of their Jewish population. And that's one of the boats. And that's a super story. And the Danes are super people. It's a super country. I love you, Denmark. This song is for you.
The gardens were tended, the animals fed, even the blankets were tucked in the beds. Nothing was broken, the walkways were swept, everything looked like it did when they left. The government stepped down, they firmly refused to carry out the order to round up the Jews. The Dane was a Dane, the law was the law, there'd be no Jewish question in Denmark at all. Sweden was willing to take them all in till it was safe to go back home again. From the time word of the plan was leaked, they only would have till the end of the week. No organization, no chain of command. It was just everybody lending a hand. Schools were closed, work shut down, while the people were moved to little harbor towns. They came full of ones who had already gone to passenger ships that they didn't get on. After spending a week in the harbor waiting, they steamed away from Copenhagen. Hospital beds, with bandages wrapped round their faces and heads. Some were hidden in homes or in schools or in backyard sheds with the garden tools. Rowboats, fishing boats, dinghies, and yachts took them for 9 or 10 miles across. The German patrols, they hadn't a clue, right under their noses and back again too. They came for the ones who had already gone to passenger ships that they didn't get on, and to spending a week in the harbor waiting, they steamed away from Copenhagen. Cover of night, aiming for those faraway lights. Babies were drugged to keep them asleep. Nobody spoke, nobody breathed. 7,000 people were saved, thanks to their neighbors, decent and brave. And when they got home, their walkways were swept. Everything looked like it did when they left. They came for the ones who had already gone. Passenger ships that they didn't get on, after spending a week in the harbor waiting. They steamed away from Copenhagen.
Once again, I would love to know where you're watching from today. I am available for private Zoom concerts for you and a gang of your friends if you're so interested. For educators out there, I have a lot of songs that might potentially fit into your curriculum. If you're interested in something like that, contact me either through Facebook or through Chuck at chuckbrodsky.com. What else can I? Oh, yeah. So, this is one of my favorite baseball stories of all time. And it's actually about possibly the most tragic blown call in the history of baseball. An umpire by the name of Jim Joyce, now retired, was calling a game where a pitcher for the Detroit Tigers, Armando Galarraga, was 1 out away from a perfect game. And Jim Joyce at first base called that batter safe at first. As you can see, the ball is in the first baseman's glove before the runner touches the base. Now, Armando Galarraga reacted by keeping his composure. He had half a smile on his face. He walked away, but he didn't challenge the call. And this was, unfortunately, just before baseball started using instant replay to overturn the calls. But when Jim Joyce had a chance to watch the replay after the game, he was absolutely distraught, beside himself. And he did an amazing thing. He sent word to the Detroit Tigers clubhouse to please ask Armando Galarraga to make his way to the umpire's dressing room so that Jim Joyce could personally apologize. I call that being a stand-up guy. Well, the very next day, ordinarily, Jim Joyce was the home plate umpire, and ordinarily it would be the two opposing managers that would come out to home plate with the lineup card and present them to the umpire. But Detroit that day sent out Armando Galarraga, and I want to show you this. So in honor of Jim Joyce, this is called Stand Up Guy.
Jim Joyce, he's a stand-up guy. Listen to me and I'll tell you why. He made a mistake and it made him cry, and he didn't go fishing for an alibi. Jim Joyce, stand-up guy. Pitcher was throwing a perfect game, got the first 2 outs of the final frame. Ball was hit, he won the race. He caught the throw with his foot on the base. Jim Joyce, stand-up guy. Joyce called the batter safe at first, a putrid call, the all-time worst, a travesty. The guy was out, the replay showed beyond a doubt. Jim Joyce, stand-up guy. And with half a smile to mask his grief, the pitcher stood in disbelief, never lost his dignity. His eyes though said, "You're kidding me." Jim Joyce, stand-up guy. Well, there still was one more out to get. The game it wasn't over yet. It should have been. He caught the throw with plenty of time, but there you go, Jim Joyce, stand-up guy. Jim Joyce watched the tape, left him all bent out of shape. He sat a while alone, distressed, outside the door, the bloodthirsty press. Jim Joyce, stand-up guy. I caught that kid a perfect game. He stood up sobbing and took the blame. Was convinced of what I saw. I just missed the bleeping call. Jim Joyce, stand-up guy. Nobody's perfect, the pitcher would say in an interview. The very next day, he's only human. He made a mistake, and I hope everybody will cut him a break. Jim Joyce, stand-up guy. Yeah, the umpired an imperfect game, and it happens sometimes, and it's a shame. But all you can do is stand up tall and say you're sorry you blew the call. Jim Joyce, stand-up guy. Yeah, Jim Joyce, he's a stand-up guy. It's something nobody can deny. He made a mistake and it made him cry, and I didn't go fishing for an alibi. Jim Joyce, stand-up guy. Jim Joyce, stand-up guy. Jim Joyce, stand-up guy.
If you happen to be watching on YouTube, the chat section and the comment section both have all of the information on how to tip today if you are interested. Also, as you can see, there are now graphics on the screen. As always, I rely on your generosity and kindness to tip any amount that you're comfortable with. This is how I'm making my living these days until it's possible to get back out on the road. So, I do want to mention something that you might be interested in checking out. I have a page at patreon.com, and if you're not familiar with Patreon, check out that page. Patreon is a platform where you can support your favorite artists on a monthly basis, and you can pledge any amount you want. Some people have different tiers and give varying degrees of access to the things that they post on Patreon, but I don't have tiers. I give everybody equal access, so if all you can afford is $1 a month, you still have the same access as somebody who might be giving $50 a month. But I share things there that I don't share elsewhere, like first drafts of new songs or videos of new songs. I also do Zoom hangouts occasionally with my supporters. Just hang for an hour or two and chat about anything, ask questions. I play requests, and they're a lot of fun. We'll be doing another one of those real soon. So, let's see. Well, you all know about Jackie Robinson crossing baseball's color line, but what a lot of people don't know is that he first played a season for the Brooklyn Dodgers farm club, the Montreal Royals, before ever playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And in Jackie's very first game for the Montreal, he hit a home run. He went 4 for 5 that day. One of his hits was a home run. There were 2 runners on base when he hit that home run. And as they touched home plate, they continued on into the dugout. But the next batter, the on-deck batter, was a man by the name of George Shotgun Shuba. And George Shuba stood there at home plate with a smile on his face and his hand extended. And he shook hands with Jackie Robinson just as he crossed the plate. And that moment happened to be caught by a photographer. I thought I had loaded that photo. Unfortunately, I did not. Oh, yes, I did. There it is. So the day that George Shuba passed away, 5, 6, 7 years ago, this photo made the rounds on Facebook, which is where I saw it, and I thought it was a stunning photograph. It spoke to me in so many ways. I love the body language of all the people in that photo, and it inspired me to write this song called The Handshake. Now, there has been a statue commissioned of that very handshake, and the unveiling was to have been this coming April. It's been postponed to July, and hopefully it will happen. And if it does, I'll be there to sing the song as part of the ceremony.
Oh, the ump and the catcher had the hands on their hips. It was only a handshake, it was a coming to grips. Sun was casting long shadows as he touched every base, and as he rounded the third one, the sun lit up his face. It was only a handshake, well, maybe not quite. Captured on camera in black and white, the two of them smiling as he touches the plate, as he crosses the line, when he knows that he's safe. It was only a handshake on opening day, and no one knew what would happen if the fella could play. It was only a handshake, but it was the first. And of course there were others who stood up and cursed. It was only a handshake on a minor league field, and it wasn't till later it became a big deal. It's just something that happened, it was nothing he planned. A guy hit a homer, so he stuck out his hand. It was only a handshake, a bond between men, teammate to teammate. That's all it was then. He stood there to greet him. He could have waited on deck. It was only a handshake, but he showed him respect. It's only a handshake. It's only a handshake. It was only a handshake. It was only a handshake.
So, I want to show you something funny here. I thought this needed to be a song. And I'll show you this in a second. It's about a super character who happens to hold baseball record for most consecutive games not playing in. And his name is Splinter Cheeks Johnson. One day, I happened to see this Facebook post from my Facebook friend Jerry Grillo. And as you see, his original name was Gruber, but artistic license, I changed it to Splinter Cheeks Johnson. And he made up this character about Splinter Cheeks holding the record for 1,152 consecutive games not played in that needed to be celebrated. And so, this is Splinter Cheeks Johnson.
You can count on Splinter Cheeks Johnson to cheer, a utility player for his whole career. He ate sunflower seeds and he chewed bubble gum, and he made sure to save all the other guys some. He'd put his uniform on every day, sat in the dugout and shouted hooray. He would sign autographs after the game. Nobody ever had heard of the name. 1,100 plus 52 consecutive games. Ah, the bubbles he blew. Not one single inning did he ever play. He worked hard to keep himself out of the way. He won a World Series, he got his ring. He got sprayed with champagne, it was the craziest thing. He got to ride in the next day's parade. Full share of the World Series pot he was paid. Well, in case you might wonder, and most people would, they kept him around because he was good. He would always move over with excellent form. The spot that he vacated always was warm. Now one time Splinter Cheeks was sent out on deck. The streak on the line, his nerves were a wreck. But the batter ahead of him made the last out. Way to go, Splinter Cheeks! Nobody shouted. Johnson was always prepared, quick to react if trouble should flare. He was always willing to take one for the team from a secret stash of hemorrhoid cream. Splinter Cheeks Johnson's body wore out. It was sad to see, but there was no doubt about it. He'd start to lose steam by the top of the fifth. His eyelids got heavy and his posture would drift. Now one time Splinter Cheeks was taking a nap. He covered his eyes with the bill of his cap. Murderous foul ball bounced off his head. They carried him out. Splinter Cheeks, he was dead. Splinter Cheeks Johnson baseball card set. A nickel is probably the most you could get. He had no statistics to put on the backs, not even any interesting facts. Yeah, you can count on Splinter Cheeks Johnson to cheer, the utility player for his whole career. He ate sunflower seeds and he chewed bubble gum, and he made sure to save all the other guys some.
Well, I have one more song for you. I'm going to do my little weekly magic trick. Switch over. Now, I'm well aware of what's happening with my shirt right now. I have no idea why that's happening with my shirt. Should have happened during the Doc Ellis song, but it's this camera, and messed around with some settings. Kind of cool. Anyway, thanks very much for watching this week. One thing I wanted to tell you about, and I want to make sure I don't forget, is that I have just announced new dates for Scotland tours and Ireland tours for 2022, and you can find them on my website, chuckbrodsky.com. If you're interested, don't wait, because these tours sell out in a matter of days from when I announce them. So I want to sing this song for my parents. I want to sing it for Betsy Burnham, who is home. I'm very happy to hear that. And also want to sing it for Bob and Allison and for Carol Tribble.
Well, I hope I see you later, 'cause it's time for me to go. That's my ride that just pulled over, and it sure was good to know you. So go answer your calling, go and fill somebody's cup. If you see an angel falling, won't you stop and help them up? We are each other's angels, and we meet when it is time. Keep each other going and show each other signs. Sometimes you'll stumble, sometimes you'll just lie down, sometimes you'll get lonely with all these people around. You might shiver when the wind blows, and you might get blown away. You might lose a little color, you might lose a little faith, but we are each other's angels, and we meet when it is time. We keep each other going, and we show each other signs. Thank you for the water. Thought I was gonna die out here in the desert, but you quenched my thirst. Let's break a little bread together. Got a little manna. It was a gift for someone who was passing by and offered me a lift. We are each other's angels, and we meet when it is time. Keep each other going and show each other signs.
Thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay well. Hope to see you next week.